Well, for years we've heard from animal rights activists about Lucy, the 34-year-old elephant at Edmonton's Valley Zoo. They've been calling for Lucy to be relocated to a warmer climate, preferably a sanctuary with other elephants. Now there's a new voice in the debate. Dr. Debi Zimmermann is a retired veterinarian. She reviewed elephant research and Lucy's medical records before writing a 65-page report. Dr. Debi Zimmermann joins me in studio this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Kim.
So why did you decide to do this research into Lucy?
I heard from Bob Barker that Lucy was actually suffering, and I wanted to check into that because I thought if that's happening in my own backyard, it really needs to be looked at. So I thought I'd get all the information on both sides so that I could be an unbiased, credible source to kind of overview all the issues involved so that everybody had all the information.
So what's the foremost argument you would make for why Lucy should be moved out of Edmonton Zoo?
This is a highly sentient, highly social animal with a huge brain and a intelligence close to humans, and we've plucked her from an environment where she was evolved for 60 million years to be perfectly adapted to and thrown her into an area on the other side of the continent, on the other side of the equator, in a concrete barn, basically, and expected her to be our little entertainment animal and throw her hay as we would a horse and walk her twice a day like we would a dog, and then expect her to have a good life.
Do you see any advantage to keeping her in Edmonton, given that she's been here for so long? She has friends. I mean, she has a routine. She has a life here.
She definitely has people that love her, but that can't be a substitution for members of her own kind to give her the nurturing and support that she's missed this entire time and to form that essential social group that gives them social structure. She also needs to move 50 kilometers a day to keep her joints and muscles healthy and such, and she hasn't got that at all. And then she needs all the other things that elephants need to, some complexity in her environment just to stimulate their brains so she doesn't have these mental complications and all the stereotyping that we're seeing from lack of mental stimulation.
So we talked to zoo officials about the findings in your report, and here's what they had to say. You'll hear from the zoo's vet, Dr. Milton Ness, but first here's the zoo's supervisor of animal care, Dean Treichel.
And I think it's a lot of the same things being said over and over again, just a different voice in this case. It's a compilation of all of our medical records for 20 years on the elephant, and same with everybody else. No contact, no review of this elephant other than just to look at written record. And kind of disappointing, really.
There's been some allegations made that Lucy is not getting all of her needs met here, which I strongly disagree with. I believe that Lucy's getting all of her physical and social needs being met here right now. And I'm saying that based on what I know as a veterinarian over 27 years. I'm saying it from a humane standpoint. I'm saying it from a physical standpoint.
Now, you're also a veterinarian, Dr. Zimmermann. How do you respond to those criticisms that you can't accurately reach any kind of conclusion without actually physically examining Lucy?
This is the problem. We've been fighting for someone to actually have an independent look at Lucy, but they're refusing that. So to have to make that claim to say nobody's looked at her is it's primarily due to their reluctance to let anybody in. Secondly, it doesn't require anybody to review her records to see that they're in violation of Government of Alberta violations and their own CASA regulations. And I have to point out, too, that Dr. Milton Ness and I have resumes that could be considered equivalent. And if they consider him an expert, then I have the similar level of expertise.
Have you asked the zoo to go in there and examine Lucy?
It was offered to me that I could see her behind the scenes after a lunch with Dr. Ness, but then he reneged after the lunch because he said, obviously, he didn't change my mind. And by the way, we're not going to be seeing Lucy after all.
Now, animal rights activists have been calling for Lucy to be moved for quite some time. Why do you think it matters for the public to hear this message from a veterinarian now, from yourself?
Right. They hear Bob Barker speaking out. They hear Canadian authors speaking out. But then their comment is, what do these people really know about elephants? What do the vets say? And then they go back to what they've been hearing over and over and over from the veterinarians, that she's basically a well-adjusted elephant, even though she's alone and she's with humans only. But she's not healthy enough to move, and in fact, she would die. So I think it's like kind of like a fear-mongering where they just have everybody worried that if they move her, she's going to die.
The zoo isn't swayed by your argument. I'm just wondering, what are you going to do next? Is it over for you?
It's nowhere near over for me. And I just want to point out, too, that Lucy really hasn't had any veterinary expertise looking at her at all. She had basically no veterinary things happening with her for the first 12 years. Then she had the zoo's 350 animals had a once weekly visit by a mixed animal practitioner that had his own practice, and all the cattle, horses, sheep, goats, and pigs he had to take care of. And then he had the responsibility of 350 animals, 100 species that he spent a half a day to 1 day once a week looking at. So that was the kind of care she had up until last year. And then Milton Ness came on board, and he's basically a small animal practitioner that spent the last 7 years teaching at a technical college. So he's not an expert either. So I'm saying she hasn't had expert veterinary care and or advice, and she really needs to be evaluated by a panel of those experts.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks so very much, Kim.
Dr. Debi Zimmermann is a veterinarian who lives in the Edmonton area. She recently retired after running the Terwilliger Veterinary Clinic.